Now, with that as an introduction, I would like to turn things over to my friend and colleague James Jaffe. James and I met in when did we meet? 2010, maybe 2012,
Somewhere in there, yeah.
somewhere in there. We
Can't
met.
have been before 2010. I had moved
Oh,
it.
that's true. We met at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. He and I have collaborated in so many different ways over the years, not just through the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival. We've also toured in Europe several times as two-thirds of the Zurich Beethoven Trio. James is also the founder and director of Festival Roland, which is a similar kind of touring, retreat-based music festival experience based in Burgundy, in the heart of France. That is a real treat. One of the things that I really miss about having lost so much this summer. In any case, I'm going to turn things over to James, and I'm going to move this microphone over to his side of the living room, and I'm also going to switch the camera here. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. James Jaffe. You want to say something?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. I didn't prepare a whole lot to say, but in a sense, I've also prepared ever since I picked up a cello, I prepared to start dealing with, talking with, playing Bach. So there's so many different angles that you could come at these cello suites from, but in a sense, I will try not to say too much because it's some of my favorite music, and it is first and foremost that if there were any other way to talk about what's going on in these pieces besides me going through the effort of playing them and you going through the effort of listening and wondering what was happening in Bach's mind, if there was any other way, then we wouldn't have to play them in the first place. But just a few small foundational things. These are 6 incredible pieces that really defined and pushed the capabilities of the solo cello. And so I think it was a really great decision by Ian to feature these as the backbone of some of the fall Trinity concerts coming up. You know, I was just tuning in yesterday and I heard Suvin Kim, he's a great violinist, doing a similar project with Bach violin solo pieces, and they had Arnold Steinhardt of all people come on the Zoom and tell everybody about how the solo violin pieces are the Himalayas of the solo violin rep. He probably said Himalayas, and you know I think I thought that's so good. Where were we cellists when they were picking these metaphors? But I absolutely feel like that about these suites, and I think they are such incredible works, so closely approaching perfection in their composition that is what keeps generations of cellists coming back to play them. So that's the Bach suites. They were written in the 1720s in Cöthen, Germany, and they gave the cello a voice. Okay, so suite number 1 starts with the prelude that needs no introduction. It's probably the most famous piece of solo cello music. You've probably heard Yo-Yo do it. I know I love hearing him do it. And then following that first prelude are 5 relatively short dance movements. You know, talking about diving into the music at a retreat, I was really started thinking about what it would be physically like dancing these pieces when I saw my friend Ian over here start trying to dance to one of them when we were hanging out in Trinity over the past week. Yeah, so Bach isn't really creating music that's particularly for a dance party. He's more inspired by these 5 dance forms, which then go on to those are like a kernel of DNA that pervades each one. So again, after that famous prelude, you'll hear an Allemande. That's a very beautiful and contemplative and profound German-style dance. After that is a Courante, which is a faster and spirited French dance. After that, you'll hear the Sarabande, which is the slowest of them all, and that's a Spanish dance. And after that comes a set of minuets. It's really a minuet sandwich in which a contrasting middle minuet becomes the middle of the sandwich. So I hope you listen for that. It's the only bit of it's only the only full bit of the suite that's in minor. So sort of a very evocative moment, and that's followed at the end by a jig, and that's the Irish style dance. And enough said, let's do it.
Bravo! Bravo!
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Great. Get to take a bow too.
Yeah.
That was lovely. Well, moving forward on today's program, I wanted to ask you if anyone has questions or comments for either James or I would ask you to keep those in mind. And at the end of today's program, we'll do a little bit of Q&A, kind of a live conversation with you all. One of the perks of Zoom is it's almost as though we're in the same room together. We can really chat about ideas and discuss the music. So if you have anything, please save it for the end of the program. Next on the program, I'm going to share some of my favorite piano music. That is to say, some of my favorite piano music this week. You know, that seems to change week by week, depending on the mood and depending on what I'm working on. But the first piece that I wanted to share with you today is one by the composer Franz Liszt. Liszt was one of the great sort of figures of what we call the Romantic era of the 19th century. He was a great virtuoso at the piano. And you know, just by looking at his music, you know how accomplished and how good he was. He seemed always willing to sort of showcase his talents in that way. This piece that I'll play for you, Liszt calls a concert etude. It's worth unpacking that a little bit. You know, an etude, you know, the French word étude means to study. And an etude for the piano is generally seen as something for a pianist like me to study, to help, you know, improve technique, to help the hands move around, to help sort of navigate all the complexities of this wonderful instrument. You know, many etudes are simply practice pieces. Some of them work on scales, up and down. Some of them work on octaves, where you spread the hands. You know, some are in thirds, where you end up with your fingers looking like a spider. You know, there's all kinds of these. And, you know, in the Romantic era, composers like Liszt and like Chopin and so many others actually intended for these to also be performance pieces. So, you know, a beautiful story being told with the music, but also, you know, something for the pianist to focus on, you know, in terms of specific technical details. In this one, there are a couple of elements at play, and I just wanted to show you what they are so that you can kind of track how this music evolves. The first element that Liszt presents us with is the idea of arpeggios. An arpeggio, you know, it's related to the word harp. An arpeggio is like a chord that is played like a harp, you know, up and down. So instead of just a single chord, I play it note by note. And that is the first challenge of the piece, is to navigate those arpeggios as they ripple up and down the piano, creating kind of a harmonic wave in the background. Now, as you saw, that occupies both of my hands. So what happens next is that when Liszt asks me to play a melody on top of that, then I have to start alternating, you know, how my hands jump around. Because as one hand is doing the arpeggios and a melody needs to be played, so the other hand perhaps crosses over, and then they take turns like that. So when the melody comes, it gets even more complicated later. It's this kind of incredible combination of acrobatics and just controlling that lovely sound. It makes it a very satisfying piece to play and to practice and to really work out. And I think, you know, having that little window into this will make a difference, because, you know, when Liszt calls this a concert etude, he's really giving it two different purposes. You know, as a concert piece, it's meant to be listened to and enjoyed, and to, you know, just let it wash over you with that beautiful melody and those colors. But as an etude, it's also meant for me to have specific kind of goals in mind. Liszt, you know, there are a few moments in this piece where you hear what kind of performer he was. By all accounts, he was an incredible improviser at the piano. and he would take opportunities in the middle of concerts, sometimes in the middle of pieces, to just start improvising off the page a little bit. You hear him add some of those improvisational moments into this piece, almost as though he lingers on a chord and he's so overtaken with this particular moment and this particular color that he stays on that chord, sort of riffing up and down the keyboard. It's a wonderful thing. That's all I'll say about this. I hope you enjoy this. That's not all I'll say about this. Sorry. There is a subtitle to this piece. Liszt did not give it this subtitle, but it is now it is always at the top of the page. In parentheses, under the title Concert Etude, you have the Italian word un sospiro, which means a sigh.
Do you want the speaking mics on?
No, it's okay.
J'aimerais ça. Ouais.
Bravo.
Bravo, bravo, bravo.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Beautiful, Ian.
Thank you so much. I'm glad. I even heard someone's dog saying bravo.
Oh,
That's so charming.
my dogs
Uh,
are here.
One of the silver linings of doing concerts on Zoom is everyone brings their pets to the
Come here.
concert. Well, my cats haven't made an appearance yet, I should say. I love that piece. You know, it's one of those pieces of music. Sometimes people ask me a little bit about, you know, what it's like performing, and I have to say, one thing that we often say as performers is, you know, no piece of music ever comes out the same way twice. You know, every single time we play it is a slightly different interpretation, you know, based on, you know, what's going on inside of us, based on how each individual moment sounds coming out of the instrument. But I have to say that Liszt piece is very much one of those pieces where, you know, you may think you have a plan for all of this, but in the moment it all seems to be malleable. And I mean that in a really wonderful way, not to say that it's somehow unpredictable, but that it has a wonderful quality of feeling like, you know, when you're really in the moment and present with it, that you can do that. Now, this next piece that I'll share with you is another one of the great works from the same era, what we call the Romantic era, sort of the mid to late 19th century. This next one is by Frederic Chopin. I have been spending quite a lot of time with Chopin's music during this whole sort of pandemic shutdown era. And I have to say, it's been really just so wonderful. For several months, I was completely obsessed with Chopin's Barcarolle. And don't worry, I'll play that again, but not tonight. I'll play that later. But then also, very recently, I picked up a piece by Chopin called his Fantasie Impromptu. This is a piece that's tremendously popular. I think, you know, it's one of those ones that you'll probably recognize. Even if you don't recognize the opening, you'll probably recognize the middle section, which has this incredible melody that sort of comes out of nowhere. That melody, by the way, was picked up and arranged by someone as a pop song. It's I think the lyrics are, "I'm always chasing rainbows." So anyway, if that comes to mind, don't feel bad. You're not crazy. Somebody actually stole that from Chopin. But in any case, this is an interesting work because Chopin actually did not publish this during his lifetime. For some reason, he thought that it perhaps didn't belong in his publicly released catalog. After he died, it was published, and I don't know what he would make of it, the fact that it's now one of his more popular works. The title, Fantasie Impromptu, is kind of two titles smashed together. A fantasy and an impromptu, those are both fairly common works from this era and from earlier. A fantasy suggests a piece of music that is somehow kind of spontaneous in its generation, that it doesn't have a set structure, but that it evolves as it goes. And an impromptu is kind of a similar suggestion. An impromptu suggests something, well, improvised or impromptu. So here, perhaps we have a window into what, you know, Chopin's improvisatory style might have been. I hope you enjoy this. This is Chopin's Fantasie Impromptu. Thank you very much. Now, I have two more works that I wanted to share with you all this evening. The first one is one by Bela Bartók. Bartók is another composer. I've been just playing a lot of his music lately. Later this fall, I'll be playing his Suite for piano, just an incredibly wonderful piece. But also, I picked up this next piece, which I'll play for you, which is Bartók's 6 Romanian folk dances. Now, these are just a collection, you know, as stated, of 6 Romanian folk dances. And I have to say, I've probably played this piece maybe 300 times with probably about 75 different violinists, because there is a tremendously popular arrangement of these for violin and piano. But it's for some reason I just have never experienced the original version, which is for piano, that Bartók wrote. Now, Bartók is one of those figures. You know, he has this reputation of being one of the modernists of the early 20th century, with, you know, all of this sort of intimidating avant-garde style. But the truth is, Bartók was really raised in this romantic tradition. In the late 1800s, Bartók went to the Franz Liszt Conservatory in Budapest. He was a great sort of romantic style pianist as a young man. And of course, his own musical tastes and compositions evolved along with everyone else in the early 20th century. I mean, the whole world was changing. It was, I think, impossible not to. But in any case, Bartók also had this fascination and love of folk music, especially from his native Hungary and the surrounding countries in Eastern Europe. And Bartók would spend summers traveling throughout the countryside, going from village to village, sort of asking for the local musicians to teach him, you know, their local music. And he was very diligent. He would catalog the music. He would write down the tunes. He even had sort of primitive recording devices that he could record some of it with. And you just have to imagine him sort of going from town to town, you know, going to the tavern and listening to all the musicians. And he's really now, we consider him a pioneer in what we call the field of ethnomusicology. But now, as a matter of course, you might expect this to happen, that this love and fascination of Hungarian and Eastern European folk music, it made its way into his own compositions as well. So this next piece is a great example of that. These 6 Romanian folk dances, you know, he composed them in his own musical language to a certain extent, but he is also using, you know, the actual melodies and the actual style that he would have heard in these little villages. I'm going to read to you the titles of these dances because I think they're kind of charming. The first dance, which is rather, has this kind of wonderful swagger to it, it's called A Stick Game. The second dance, which is a little more hesitant perhaps, is called The Peasant's Costume. The third one I love. The title of the third dance is called Standing Still, which I would love to see someone dance this dance, because I just don't quite understand what, you know, I mean, I guess we could all do it just standing still, but there's a certain kind of precariousness to the music. It's very evocative, I think. The fourth one is called A Mountain Horn Song. The fifth one is called The Romanian Garden Gate, and at the end here they start to pick up and become a little more wild. And the last one is called The Little One, perhaps referring to a child, which is perhaps why it gets so wild at the end. So I hope you enjoy these 6 little Romanian folk dances.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. So expressive. Beautiful.
Thank you very much. A little bit of Bartók just to make sure nobody's nodded off, or at least get my heart rate going. Make sure the neighbors are paying attention to today's program. I have one more piece to share with you. This one is just a little bit of something sweet, a little bit of dessert for us. Finally, I want to thank you all for tuning in to tonight's program. We're going to do a program next Sunday. Next Sunday, our program will be at 11 o'clock in the morning, Pacific time. The reason we are doing that is so that we can host a live performance from some of our colleagues who live in Copenhagen, in Denmark. My dear friend Emma Steele, who is the concertmaster of the Royal Danish Opera Company, she will be doing a program of duos with her friend Hilda. They will be doing violin duos live at 11 o'clock. Also on next week's program, our friend and colleague Evan Kahn will be playing Bach's second cello suite. So if you tune in next week, you'll hear Chapter 2 of Bach's cello epic. What did you call it? The Himalayas? Chapter 2 of the Himalayas of the cello. That's next Sunday at 11 o'clock in the morning. Apologies if that conflicts with your Sunday morning worship service, but we had to find a way to accommodate with someone like Emma who lives 9 time zones away. So that's what we came up with. Just a reminder that this program and all of our programs are offered free to the community, and the community now is kind of a worldwide community. I would like to encourage you, if you haven't done so yet, to please make a contribution to the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival. This allows us to keep doing programming like this. This allows us to pay musicians for actual performance work, you know, one of those rare things these days. Your support is very much appreciated, I can tell you that. It's very easy to do. Simply go to trinityalpscmf.org. That's the Trinity Alps Chamber Music website. There is a way that you can contribute right there. There is also, if you are the kind of person who likes using the U.S. Postal Service to send handwritten checks, there are instructions to do that as well. Now, I promised you one last piece of music. This next work is by the American composer Samuel Barber. Barber is one of my favorite composers from the sort of 20th century American style here. This is from his book of piano pieces that he called Excursions. And when he gave him this title, he said that they represented excursions into rural American idioms of folk music. So like Bartók and like perhaps Grieg or Dvorak, so many others, Barber is taking little bits and pieces of American folk music to try to create, you know, what an American classical piano sound might sound like. Now I'm going to play the third of these excursions. It is a wonderful kind of, it's like a set of variations on a little folk song theme. The folk song is one that actually Barber made up. It sounds very much like a folk song. In fact, I think it sounds like an old song called The Streets of Laredo. I'm not sure if any of you will agree with me, but at least has echoes of that. One of the things I love about this piece, you know, I was talking a little bit about Franz Liszt and how the challenges that he presents to the pianist in a way kind of make the music come alive. In the case of this piece, Samuel Barber, even though it is a gentle and beautiful and lyrical piece, it is full of these wonderful complexities. For example, in the very beginning, I have to play different rhythms in each of my hands. The left hand is pretty straightforward. The left hand is playing in 4. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4. So my left hand has to keep that pattern of 8 going, while my right hand plays a pattern of 7. As you hear, they don't exactly line up. I mean, you know, there's a mathematical way that you can get them all to fit, but there's going to be a little bit of and that kind of thing, when applied in certain ways, it can create a lot of sort of nervous tension driving the music forward. But somehow in this way, it just adds to this kind of luxurious color that Barber is able to get out of the piano. Now that's just the first example of about a dozen ways that Barber combines different rhythms in the hands. And again, it's one of those pieces that is not just a pleasure to listen to, but it's a pleasure to feel it under the hands, a pleasure to play. It's a pleasure to look at it on paper and just consider how magnificent it is. With that as a little prelude, I invite you to enjoy this little excursion by Samuel Barber.
Hey.
Thank you.
Wow, that was
Beautiful.
incredible.
Thank you very much. Isn't that
That was
just
like
magnificent?
pat
I
your
love that.
head, rub your tummy at the same
Oh,
Yeah.
time.
it's
that is.
more than that. It's patting my head, rubbing my tummy, counting to 7, counting to
Tap
12.
your foot, yeah.
Counting to 5. Oh my gosh. Well,
No,
thank
it's
you all. Thank you again to everyone for joining us today. Now, as promised, I wanted to take just a moment and open up the floor a little bit. You know, as long as as long as we're in my living room, we might as well treat this as a living room concert and have a conversation. I don't have a glass of wine ready, so I can't offer a toast. But I would like, James talked about so many things. I talked about so many things. Yet inevitably, we probably left out something that you are curious about. So if anyone has questions for us, about any of this music you heard today, about, our illustrious careers, stuck at home playing music, or whatever that means. We would love to hear them. I've got my gallery view queued up so I can see most of you if your camera's on. You can raise your hand like an old-fashioned, and then I will invite you. For example, Priscilla, you were the first for me to see. Would you like to unmute yourself and chime in? You'll have to unmute yourself first.
Gonna leave. Okay.
Yes. Oh, wait, sorry. There you go. Try one more time. Oh, never mind. Well, if you like, you can also type into the chat here. Let's see. I see Evelyn David. Did you have something you wanted to share?
Oh, I love you. I do.
I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're glorious. Memories from the Metropolitan Club.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I remember playing there. Oh my gosh, that must have been what, 12 years ago or something?
Yes.
What a wonderful place.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for chiming in.
About
I really
3 years you came over and played for me.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. Thank you so much.
I love it.
Oh, well, let's see. Anybody else have something that they'd like to chime in with? It can be a question for me or James. It can be a declaration of adoration like you just heard. Oh, Sigrid, hello.
Well, I'm a folk dancer, and when you played the Standing Still, I sort of saw an older couple pretty much dancing in place. Your hands moved, but you were not all over the keyboard, and they were not all over the dance floor. That's my thought.
That is wonderful. Perhaps you and I could collaborate. You can choreograph these dances. That would be maybe our next musical experiment here. Thank you for that. Let's see. I think I have a question actually for James. What is it like to play through an entire dance suite, with different dances? How much do you think about, like Sigrid mentioned folk dances, how much do you think about what these actual steps would be like as you play through the Bach's dance movements?
That's a great question, Ian. Well, so it's funny. I think as I was sort of alluding to, these are using dance as the beginning of the inspiration. But I definitely did go on YouTube at some point and start looking at like, okay, what does an Allemande actually look like? What does a Courante actually look like? These like Baroque dance movements. And then I would try and wrap that in, but Bach is, I think, also transcending the original, prescription of steps for these things, and so it's in that way that I think we, there are these theories about art about how it's all coming from a sort of a unified pool of creativity, and I think it's the same sort of inspiration that gave rise to the dance that also gave rise to like the musical interpretation of it. At least that's how it feels to me when I'm playing those.
Here you go. Cheers.
Hey, cool. We are doing the post-concert thing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well,
so yeah, that's a bit of a roundabout answer to your question, but in essence, I do imagine and think about how these might be danced. And there was a time early, it was either late 90s or early aughts that Yo-Yo Ma put out a really cool set of actual dance interpretations, also of the Bach suites. So
nice.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Let's see. Does anyone else have something they want to share? I guess I could check the chat too. If anybody has questions, you can put them in the chat. I heard at least one person agreed with the Streets of Laredo reference. I'm not sure if it was quite explicit, but it was at least it has echoes of part of that melody, I think.
This is good.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, we deserve it. Cheers, everyone.
But as to what else you think about playing those, this is congrats. You guys are my pilot audience. I've never played that suite from memory before.
Wow.
So I guarantee I was having at least as much an adventure as everyone else. But I'm grateful to be able to have the chance to do that also, because You know, it's like we always are trying to find different ways of inspiration, and one of the possible routes into that is trying to see what you can pack into your head, so that visually you're not necessarily following along a bunch of a bunch of notes.
Yeah, there's something like when the music is really integrated into. When you memorize a piece, it's like it's integrated into your whole body. I mean, part of it is your mind just remembering the notes and how to do them, but part of it is just doing it so much and really focusing on the whole approach that I don't know. So something about performing from memory sometimes feels very natural. Mm-hmm. And I have to admit, I don't do it very often now. You know, most of my career for the last decade has been as a collaborator and doing chamber music and duos and so on. And almost all the time you use the music for that. And so because of that, I've just gotten used to using the music again. You can even see my iPad back there. It makes it very easy. I don't even need a page turner anymore. I can do it all myself. But still, yes. We had a question from Don. Just clarifying, yes, Don, that was the first cello suite. It's in the key of G major, is that right? G major. And then next week we will hear the second cello suite. Is that the D minor one? Yeah. Am I right? Yes. Okay. I'm starting to learn these things too.
Yeah.
All right.
So that was the first. Prudy Noon wrote in a little earlier saying the farming life appeals to us, and that was fun too. We did have a great time recently, staying up on the farm in Heimpom and kind of dividing our time between helping out with some farm work and with rehearsal. So.
Yeah, that's true. James and I were in a farming bubble together, I guess you could say, where, we lived on a farm for 10 days and we did rehearsals, we did recordings and performances, performances like this. But it also meant that, September is the harvest season. So we also harvested corn and beans and peppers, and we did all of this sort of farm work. Farm work and music, they really go together. It was wonderful. Well, let's see. If you know anyone who missed tonight's program who might enjoy it, we have recorded it. I'm going to do a little bit of selective editing and then put it up on our YouTube channel. So if you know anyone who might be interested, you can look on the Trinity Alps YouTube channel and send them along. Or you could simply tell them to tune in next week, and they'll hear something different and yet also hopefully very beautiful. I think we've come to the end of our time together. I want to thank you all again. If I don't see you until next week, please, everyone, stay healthy, stay happy, take care, and
you too.
We'll see you next time. Thank you all so much.
It was beautiful, Ian. It was just such a joy. Such a joy, Ian. It was wonderful.
Wait, one last thing. Kyle says, how do I pay again? Kyle, you have to go to the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival website. I'll put it in the chat for you. TrinityAlpsCMF.org. All right. That is a good note to end on. Thank you, Kyle. Yeah. All right. Cheers, everyone. We'll do this again.
Knows what's up.
Okay. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you so much.
That was beautiful.